Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly thrilled to dive into today's topic with you because let's be real, it impacts literally every single one of us. We're unpacking advocate Rabia Khan's super comprehensive guide on how to actually manage the intense pressures of modern life. We're going to break down the actual signs of stress, figure out what it's literally doing to your brain and body, and most importantly, we're going to build out a real actionable toolkit so you can finally get some of that life balance we're all chasing. But, okay, before we get into the heavy science stuff, I want to hit you with a quick reframe. Think about this. Is all stress actually bad for you? I know, for most of us, just hearing the word stress brings up this instant feeling of dread and exhaustion, right? We just naturally assume it's this purely destructive force that we need to entirely eliminate from our lives. But what if I told you that you actually need a specific kind of stress just to thrive, to grow, and to succeed? Just kind of keep that in the back of your mind as we go. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at what exactly stress is. Second, the 4 types of stress. Third, spotting the signs and symptoms. Fourth, identifying your personal triggers. Fifth, therapeutic approaches and techniques. And finally, number 6, building long-term resilience. So, section 1, what exactly is stress? To really get a handle on managing stress, we've first got to strip away all the emotion and just look at the raw biology. Like, what is physically happening inside your body when you feel stressed out? Surprisingly, the scientific definition of stress only goes back to a researcher named Hans Selye in 1956. He found that stress isn't just this vague feeling. It's a profound physiological and psychological response to any demand that disrupts your body's homeostasis. And homeostasis is just a fancy word for your body's natural, comfortable baseline, its happy, balanced state. When a stressor hits, it completely knocks your internal systems out of whack, and your body scrambles to react and adapt. It's essentially a very real biological alarm bell going off. Let's look a little closer at that alarm bell. Because whether your stressor is biological, like you're fighting off a cold, or psychological, like the fear of failing a big project, or even sociological, like heavy cultural expectations, your body reacts the exact same way. It activates what's called the HPA axis and your autonomic nervous system. This triggers a massive flood of cortisol, which you probably know as the primary stress hormone, and dramatically spikes your heart rate. Your body is quite literally shifting all its energy away from long-term maintenance and throwing it all into immediate red alert survival mode. And this brilliantly illustrates the difference between 2 things people mix up all the time: stress and anxiety. Listen, stress is the broad overall biological response to a demand. Anxiety, on the other hand, is a very specific emotional response of worry or fear. Think of it like this. Imagine a job interview. The interview itself, that's the stressor. Your body's racing heart and that big cortisol spike, that is the stress. But the dread and fear you feel about potentially messing it up, that is anxiety. Anxiety is really just one possible symptom of a much larger stress response. Moving right along to section 2, the 4 types of stress. Now that we know what stress looks like biologically, it's time to shatter this massive misconception that all stress is identical. Remember that question I asked at the very beginning? Well, here is your answer. We actually have eustress and distress. Eustress is the good stress. It's short-term, it's manageable, and it actually enhances your focus and motivation. Think about the adrenaline rush right before playing a competitive sport or tackling a really tough but rewarding project. It actively promotes growth. Distress, though, that's the dark side. That hits when demands completely overwhelm your ability to cope, leading to impairment, emotional breakdown, and eventually total burnout. It's basically the difference between a challenging, muscle-building workout and a crushing physical injury. And then we have the categories of duration, acute versus chronic stress. Acute stress is that immediate, short-term fight or flight response. It's super intense but very temporary, like the sheer panic you feel right before stepping on stage for a public speaking event. Once you're done, the event is over and your body returns to homeostasis. Chronic stress, however, is this dangerous, prolonged state of arousal. We're talking about the stress of an ongoing financial crisis or a toxic workplace that drags on for weeks, months, or even years. This is the kind of stress that keeps your cortisol levels artificially pumped up and poses a massive risk to both your physical and psychiatric health. Which brings us to section 3, spotting signs and symptoms. Knowing that chronic distress is dangerous is one thing, right? But how do we actually know when we're slipping into that danger zone? Well, we have to learn how to spot the signs our biological alarm system is desperately trying to give us. Take a quick look at this table and maybe do a mental check-in with yourself. Stress usually manifests across 3 main categories. Physically, you might be getting these unexplained headaches, constant fatigue, or maybe you're dealing with insomnia. Emotionally, it often shows up as this constant undercurrent of anxiety, maybe a really quick temper, or even depressive moods. And behaviorally, you really got to watch your habits here. Are you overeating? Are you relying a little more on alcohol to wind down? Are you suddenly withdrawing from your friends? Listen, these aren't just random personality quirks. They are measurable, real symptoms of immediate stress disrupting your entire system. And look, if you ignore those early warning signs and just allow that stress to become chronic, the impacts are severe. We're talking about clinical, life-altering outcomes here. Chronic stress literally wears down your cardiovascular system, hugely increasing your risk of hypertension and heart disease. It suppresses your immune system, which obviously makes you way more vulnerable to illness. It messes with your gut, causes long-term sleep disturbances, and it's actually a major risk factor for severe psychological conditions like clinical depression and PTSD. It's absolutely crucial to understand that you simply cannot afford to ignore chronic stress.
All right, section 4, identifying your personal triggers.
Okay, so we've covered the what and the why of stress. Now we're making a shift. Let's move from understanding the pure biology to the empowering how. How do we actually diagnose our own personal stressors so we can stop them right in their tracks? So the crucial point is that you can't defeat an enemy you can't see. And stress mapping is a truly brilliant visual tool to help us out with this. It's like a 3-step process. First, you keep a daily stress journal. Literally just jot down when you feel your heart rate spike or your mood suddenly drop. Second, take a moment to reflect on those exact situations, like who was in the room, what were you doing, what was the environment like? And third, step back and look for the patterns. By getting your stressors out of your head and making them visible on paper, you transition from feeling completely overwhelmed to having a clear, targeted map for intervention. As you start mapping your stress, you're almost definitely going to discover a hidden enemy, NATs, or negative automatic thoughts. These are those pesky, irrational, knee-jerk thoughts that pop into your head like, I'm a total failure, or, oh man, this is going to be a complete disaster. These thoughts actively amplify your biological stress response. They literally dump extra cortisol into your system for absolutely no good reason. The ultimate countermeasure here? Your self-esteem. Having low self-esteem seriously exacerbates stress because it makes you feel helpless, but actively working to build high self-esteem acts as a crucial psychological buffer. It helps you look at demands and contextualize them without instantly hitting the panic button. Let's keep moving. Section 5, Therapeutic Approaches and Techniques. Once we've identified our specific triggers and started catching those negative thoughts, we can move right into the clinical and practical toolkit available to actually intercept that stress response. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we can bridge the gap between professional therapy and our everyday habits. On one side, we have these profound clinical therapies, things like cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, which actively helps you restructure those negative thoughts, and MBSR, which uses mindfulness to directly lower your cortisol levels. But on the other side, we have techniques you can use right this very second while sitting at your desk. The 4-7-8 deep breathing technique, progressive muscle relaxation, or honestly, just practicing better time management. And the best part? You don't have to choose just one. The most resilient people out there combine both. Speaking of tools, one of the absolutely most effective ones from the clinical side is the REBT, or ABCDE model. Let's walk through it logically. It's super cool. A is the activating event. So let's say your boss sends you a super cryptic email. B is your belief about it. Your brain immediately goes, I'm totally going to get fired. C is the consequence. Your heart starts racing and you feel this massive wave of stress. Now here is where you intercept. D stands for dispute. You actively challenge that belief. You ask yourself, wait, where is the actual evidence I'm getting fired? Maybe it's literally just a routine meeting. By disputing that irrational belief, you achieve E, a new, much calmer effect. You essentially neutralize the stress entirely using just your own logic. Okay, our final section, number 6, building long-term resilience. By practicing all these techniques, we start moving out of constant damage control and into the final stage of our journey, maintaining true wellness and creating an absolute shield against future distress. Building long-term resilience is all about shifting your focus. Real resilience is built on just a few core tenets. It requires deliberately maintaining a positive outlook and purposefully developing a really strong support network of friends or colleagues. It means choosing to actually learn from past stressful experiences rather than just suffering through them and forgetting about them. And critically, and this might be the most important one, resilience demands that you accept the things you simply cannot control while aggressively focusing all your energy on the things you can control. But listen, a huge part of resilience is also pure self-awareness. Sometimes stress surpasses our individual toolkit, and I want to be super clear, that is completely normal. If you are experiencing persistent, unshakable anxiety or depression, or if stress is causing severe interference with your ability to work, sleep, or just maintain your relationships, it is absolutely time to seek help. Reaching out to professional counselors, therapists, or support groups isn't a sign of weakness in any way. It's a strategic, necessary, and incredibly smart step in your overall stress management plan. Let's move to our recap and see how this all builds a complete picture. We started today by understanding that stress is literally a biological disruption of our body's homeostasis. We learned how to recognize our own physical, emotional, and behavioral warning signs before they escalate. We mapped our personal triggers to stop those nasty negative automatic thoughts. We explored some amazing practical tools from deep breathing to the ABCDE model. And finally, we learned that prioritizing self-care and mental wellness is an absolute necessity, definitely not a luxury. So, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. You are going to face a stressor today or tomorrow. That is just inevitable. But based on everything we've learned today, how will you reframe your very next hurdle? Will you let it become this overwhelming distress? Or will you use your new toolkit to transform it into eustress, a challenge that motivates you, sharpens your focus, and actually works for you rather than against you? The choice and the tools are completely in your hands now. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I truly hope you take these strategies and go build a beautifully balanced life.